my next guest. He is the senior writer for MMA Junkie. He's actually joining me live via Zoom because he's in Abu Dhabi right now covering the UFC's Fight Island edition. Please welcome onto the show, Mr. Mike Bohn. How you doing, Mike?
I'm good, man. Just at the tail end of this mandatory 48-hour quarantine. I've done my two COVID tests, passed the first one. Soon I'm going to pass the second one, but just waiting for the results in the next couple hours here. And then we can actually get out of the hotel room and start to actually cover these fight weeks. So I'm pretty excited at this particular moment.
How was the flight over there?
Long, man. It was like 15 and a half hours. I think we got delayed about an hour and a half too. So yeah, it was a long journey, but thankfully, had some space on the plane, was able to watch some movies and stuff. Food was decent. So can't complain too much.
Awesome. Can you go ahead and let my audience know, Mike, what you do?
So yeah, I'm the senior reporter at MMA Junkie USA Today. I do obviously a lot of writing, interviews, social media for MMA Junkie, kind of have my hand in all the pots of the stuff that goes over there to a degree, some editing and stuff as well. So yeah, I mean, it's been a while since I've been in the MMA game, about 10 years since I really started. And it was the 7-year anniversary at USA Today and MMA Junkie this past August. So yeah, the time absolutely flies. It's crazy to think I've been covering the sport for so long, but it's been a really fun journey. And, even after all this time, you get new experiences like what I'm doing here in these next couple of weeks.
For sure. It's a very unique situation. You're, flying, across the world to cover some fights. And, before you can even get out and do something, you're quarantined. It's a crazy world that we've been in. How was your 2020?
It was interesting, man. I mean, obviously, it was a bit of a challenge for everyone. We all kind of went through our own unique circumstances and stuff. But yeah, I mean, it was definitely a big year of change for me. Like, I was covering UFC shows on the road, 1, 2 weeks out of every month leading up to when, Corona hit and everything kind of went on standstill. And then I didn't cover an event for 9 months there. The last one I was out was UFC 248 in March, and this will be the first time I'm back on the ground for a fight card. So yeah, it was a lot of adjustment, figuring out how to cover the sport more so from home, figuring out interviews online, kind of similar to what we're doing here right now, and just a lot of change in figuring out how to still deliver high quality content to the audience. So yeah, like on the work front, it was definitely a bit of a challenge, but I think in some ways it helped us address some of the things maybe we were lacking to a degree that we just didn't have really time to focus on in terms of, just being so focused on the road and the weekly grind in that sense. So yeah, I mean, I can't complain too much. Obviously, it's not what we all wanted out of the past year, but I think given the circumstances, we made a pretty good do.
Yeah, for sure. 2020 was definitely, the year for adapting and adjusting to situations. So that's definitely a good thing because, you find different ways to get things done, like what we're doing right now. So
Absolutely.
now going into the UFC side of things, covering Fight Island, three stacked cards, fantastic main events all the way around. Starting off with, the January 16th fight with Max Holloway and Calvin Kattar. What are you looking forward to the most in that fight?
Man, that's a tough one just to see, I think, how Max rebounds. I mean, this is his first non-title fight since I think UFC 199 in 2016. So, he's kind of seen and done it all, but Max Holloway's still only 29 years old, if you can
Yeah.
even believe that. It's insane. It feels like he's been around the game forever. So for him, I mean, it's a really important fight to see where he's at. I mean, a lot of people think he should be the champion right now. I personally thought he won the second Volkanovski fight for sure. The first one was a little bit closer, but yeah, here he is now. Like, you kind of look at the record. If he drops his fight to Calvin Kattar, he's going to be 1-4 in his past five. If you look at the Dustin Poirier loss too at lightweight, so
Yeah.
that's a spot that no matter what you think, who should have won, how close the fights were, et cetera, the record speaks for itself, and it says there you have those 4 losses out of 5 fights on paper, and that's a challenging position for anyone to be in, no matter who you are. So this is a really, really, really important fight for Max Holloway, and then Calvin Kattar. I mean, all for him, it's a big opportunity to show he's not just a surging contender; he is the contender. So I think for Calvin Kattar, it's what he's been working towards his entire career. For him, it's equivalent to a title fight. A lot of people think Max Holloway should still be featherweight champion. So big fight at 145. Really excited for it.
For sure. Now, is it fair for me to say, Mike, that I think out of people that are, put in the spotlight when it comes to, these next 3 fight cards, that Max Holloway is dealing with the most amount of pressure when it comes to, him needing a win
Yeah.
for these upcoming events?
Yeah, I think that's probably true. I mean, I think, well, I'm sure we'll get into it a bit here. Dustin Poirier, I think, has a lot of pressure in a sense
Yeah.
because I think he needs to win this fight just to, not get that stigma that you always lose the big one or something like that. But for Max, yeah, I think in terms of if he wants that featherweight title back, this is really, really important for him. I do think Max has some options. He could go back to lightweight and maybe like take the 6 months to a year to put on the proper mass and like fully commit to that division, which I think he didn't get the opportunity for when he fought Poirier. That came together within like, a month or a month and a half or something like that. Didn't get a real time frame to put the weight on. But yeah, I think that's a pretty apt analysis. I think Max Holloway really needs to win this if he wants to be featherweight champion again anytime in the near future.
Do you think it was wrong that he didn't get a 3rd fight, though, regardless of how people view, that kind of thing?
No, I mean, I wouldn't say wrong. Like the fact that he was even in the discussion to possibly get it, I think speaks volumes to Max Holloway. Like when guys really, no matter the circumstances, when you lose to the champ, it's like you're screwed until maybe that guy loses the belt or you go on like an insane tear of winning, 6, 7, 8 fights in a
Yeah.
row. So I think ultimately the right decision was made. I know Max is a beloved figure. He's, a guy to me that's been very good to me with his time throughout his career. So I would have liked to see him get that opportunity, maybe just on like a personal level again. But if you're looking at what's fair in the sport, like that's not right for Alexander Volkanovski. Like whatever you think about those decisions, that guy deserves to a degree to move on and be a true champion and fight another contender and stuff like that. And if they want to circle back in one fight, then they can do that. But I think it was ultimately fair to have Max fight someone else and give Volkanovski another fight, which I presume will be Brian Ortega.
Yeah, definitely very excited for that upcoming matchup. A co-main event for that evening will be Carlos Condit versus, I believe I have it here,
Matt Brown.
Matt Brown, actually. So what are you looking forward to in that one?
No, well, that's a fight that's been like long overdue. I think we've
For
had it like
sure.
canceled 2 or 3 times. It'll be that one where I think we'll see them in the cage. Hopefully it delivers, but to a degree, it's like, these guys are a little bit past their prime. Matt Brown's 40 years old now. Carlos Condit's 36. I
Yeah.
wish we could have seen it when it was originally supposed to happen 2, 3 years ago, because I think those guys had a little more to give now. But we've seen some of these fights before. Like look at the Shogun and Little Nog fight that we had a few months ago. Like those guys put on an
A
absolute
show.
banger at their advanced age. So I think we could get something like that with Matt Brown and Carlos Condit. I think it doesn't mean anything in terms of the top 15 rankings or the
Of course.
title picture or anything like that, but it's a good action fight between 2 of the greatest action fighters in UFC welterweight history. Matt Brown gets a knockout here. He ties Vitor Belfort's record for the most knockouts in UFC history with 12. So that's pretty crazy on his front. That's a big opportunity and a big, historic achievement he could get there. Carlos Condit, incredibly hard to knock out, though, even during this down stretch he had. So, yeah, I think it's potential for performance of the night, fight of the night, one of those guys in there, and it'll just be, a fun action fight despite not having the highest stakes or anything like that.
Yeah, it's crazy. I remember was maybe about 10 years ago, and I remember seeing Carlos Condit. May have not been that long, but I remember seeing him through his like WEC days, and
Yeah.
the guy is such a killer, man. How could you not respect both of these guys? Obviously, it's such. At least we're getting the fight. Both of them are magnificent fighters. But yeah, it's gonna be a good one to watch. Very interesting. Is there a fight here that you could point my audience to pay attention to that maybe a lot of people aren't talking about here?
On Jan 16, you feel?
Yes.
Man, it's those top 2 really have the interest. I think the quality falls off a little bit in terms of the overall, but the return of Santiago Ponzinibbio is a really curious one. Like that guy was on such a roll. If you remember his last fight, he knocked out Neil Magny pretty viciously, and we have Neil Magny here headlining the card
Yeah.
on Wednesday against Michael Chiesa. So I think people have slept on him a little bit. Obviously, that's partially due to just his inactivity. It's been I think almost 2 years or a year and a half or so since we've seen him in there. So yeah, I'm curious to see what he gives. Li Jingliang is always a fun fighter. The Leech, I think that definitely has fight of the night potential too. And yeah, I mean, Ponzinibbio wins. He's on an 8-fight winning streak, tied with Leon Edwards for the second longest in the division behind Usman. So I think he's hoping, like, obviously inactivity took him out of the rankings.
Yeah.
And if he wins here, I'm sure he'll want to get right back in there and kind of get back to the place he was after beating Neil Magny. And that's looking at like a top 5 fight that could potentially then lead into a title shot. And then obviously you have to keep an eye out for Joaquin Buckley too, the man who just came off the 2020 knockout of the year, one of the greatest viral knockouts in UFC history. He's fighting Alessio Di Chirico, if I'm pronouncing his name right. Fun stuff there.
Now, let me shift to the following card there. We got January 20th. You talked about Leon Edwards, obviously what was, a massive, main event that we were going to have when it comes to just really like the hype and people's interest. We lost Leon Edwards, such a bummer there. But we do have Michael Chiesa versus Neil Magny there. Now, very interesting fight in my opinion. Both of these guys have been in a row. They've both won, 3 fights in a row. Now, who do you think has the edge going into this fight between Magny and Chiesa?
Right now, I feel like I'm leaning a little towards Magny just because of the activity. Like Michael
Yeah.
Chiesa is coming off a full year away. It's going to be like a couple days shy of a complete 1 year layoff by the time he gets in there. And Neil Magny, man, is just one of the grittiest guys in UFC history. Like, really tough to beat. Even if you do beat him, it's hard to look really impressive in doing so. Like, you're probably just going to screech by or maybe get like a late finish that comes via like an accumulation of damage or something like that. So, yeah, I think Michael Chiesa is, in for a tough fight in his comeback here. Neil Magny, just never an easy out for anyone. I think Michael Chiesa is a very, very, very high level grappler. So I'm interested to see what the exchanges are like on the mat between these two and what happens when they tie up in the clinch and stuff. But right now, I usually tend to lean towards the guy who is more active and has a little more momentum on his side. I know they're on the same winning streak on paper, but I think Neil Magny, in terms of 2020, he gave us a lot more. He's coming off a bit more of a high, and I think that might pay dividends for him in the fight.
Yeah. Last fight he won was against Robbie Lawler, so it was a good win for him. I think I'm leaning more towards Magny just because things that you said. I think that Chiesa's gonna have a tougher time trying to really get this fight down to the ground. I feel like Magny's such a strong guy. The guy is built, and I feel like the change in the division has really helped him. And I honestly I think it's gonna be a dominant performance. It's kind of hard for me to say that when it comes to that kind that kind of a thing. But I think that the edge does go to Magny. Now let me shift to the next event. There, it's probably the one that everyone's been talking about. Without a doubt, it's McGregor versus Poirier. You know, need I say anymore when it comes to that? McGregor finally, box office, Showtime. We're finally gonna get some audience, going into that event. I'm sure it's gonna still be crazy, even if it's with around 2,000 people. Dustin Poirier has a lot to prove in this fight. And look, real quick, a lot of people that I've talked to think that this is just gonna be, a dominant performance by Conor McGregor. I still think though that Dustin has a legit chance. I'm giving him more of a chance than a lot of people are. What do you make of this fight, Mike?
Really, really interesting fight, and one that I've been wanting to see for a long time. I've been kind of beating the drum for Dustin to get this rematch for a long time. I think there's moments in the past where the timing for it made sense. It didn't materialize, and we're finally getting it now. I think really at a perfect moment. I'm sure you saw Conor McGregor saying today in the countdown special that he's going to knock out Dustin Poirier in 60 seconds within the first 60 seconds, which is a very bold claim, but not entirely unrealistic. I think if Conor does win this fight, it's going to be another early knockout, and that's going to be the most challenging point of the fight for Dustin Poirier to get through. He obviously knows what happened. We all saw what happened a long time ago, but that was 6+ years ago. Completely different man, completely different fighter, completely different weight class between these guys. So I think Dustin has come a really long way. If you're kind of comparing who's made the bigger progressions, just looking at the fights, you have to say Dustin, but there is
Absolutely.
this relative unknown with Conor McGregor. I mean, we've seen him once in the last 2+ years in the UFC against Cowboy Cerrone. The fight lasted 40 or so seconds. what can you really take against that, against a Cowboy that, was coming off 2 rough knockout losses, has been on a downward swing. But I think if you kind of look at Cowboy at this stage of his career, Conor did exactly what he needed to do and should do against a Cowboy at this stage in his career. So that's very promising. Man, there's just so many factors. Like, I don't know how to pick who's going to win this fight, but I do feel pretty confident that if we do see it end early, Conor McGregor's hand will be getting raised. If we see it go into the later rounds to a decision, I think Dustin Poirier will be the one who wins.
Now, someone that works in the world of mixed martial arts, what do you think is the end game for Conor right now? Because in my opinion, it's not money. The guy has a lot of it. He's made a lot of it. What do you think is his desire to keep going into the UFC and further along in his career?
I think it's legacy, which has been for a long time. I mean, you're absolutely right. There's money is not the motivator for him. I mean, it might be to a slight degree, but not as much as it used to be. I mean, this guy's made tons of money through obviously his Floyd Mayweather fight, his UFC fights, and then he's going to be selling his Proper 12 whiskey brand at some point down the line for probably $1 billion. So this guy has been making himself some incredible business decisions, incredible money. So I think for him at this point, he wants to wash away kind of the negative image that he gave himself. And maybe I think a lot of us feel Conor McGregor hasn't, despite being a champion in 2 weight classes, despite having the quickest title fight knockout in UFC history, being the biggest superstar we've ever seen in MMA, it almost feels like he hasn't completely fulfilled his potential, which is crazy. Like, there's more to give with this guy. I think for him, obviously, in perfect world, he would like to get that Khabib rematch. We'll see if Khabib's there, if Dana White can convince him to do another fight. That's a whole other discussion about whether or not Dana is going to be able to do that. But I think Conor wants to be the champion again. And I think if he wins this fight, that is definitely within eyesight. I mean, if the belt is available, if Khabib's gone, I think if Conor wins here, you put him into that title fight, whether it's against Gaethje or Charles Oliveira or whatever the case may be. So, yeah, I think he is motivated by greatness, by being a champion once again, and just proving to all the people who said maybe he's fallen off or he's not completely focused or whatever the case may be, proving those people wrong.
Now, for Dustin, what does a win for Dustin do for him for that fight?
I think, kind of as I said earlier, it maybe shuts up the people that say he can't win the big one. I mean, he has to some degree. He obviously beat Max Holloway. He beat Justin Gaethje. He had that really, really incredible run that got him that interim lightweight title. But the Khabib fight did not go well for him. Obviously, the first McGregor fight did not go well for him. He lost that like random spot to Michael Johnson in that main event, which is still kind of a bizarre loss to me, but
Texas,
kind of the perfect depiction of Michael Johnson's career, because he just has these like crazy random wins over like some of the biggest names along the way. But nevertheless, I think for Dustin, like, this guy wants to be a champion again. I've known Dustin Poirier for a very long time, and I do actually consider him a friend. And I know how much this sport means to him and how much being the greatest. And not only that, having, and how much this platform means to him to not only do good things for himself in his own career, but do things for his community. Obviously, he's one of the most charitable people in the entire game. And I think for him, he just wants to elevate his greatness.
Definitely. I'm definitely pulling for Dustin. I really hope, we can see something like that. Phenomenal person. You can definitely see it, and a family person. How could you not root for him? So, very excited for this fight. Regardless, whoever wins is going to obviously deserve it in that sense. What do you make of the Michael Chandler versus Dan Hooker fight?
It's interesting. I think it's a little bit of a disappointment in some degree. I mean, it's a great fight on paper. Like, it's A+, but if you look at the Michael Chandler trajectory and how this all came together, I mean, we thought there was a potential we'd be seeing him in a title fight against Khabib or Gaethje, like right off the bat. And then after that, there's talk of, maybe he'll fight Poirier, maybe he'll fight Ferguson, maybe he'll fight Gaethje. And then those are like the absolute biggest names in the division. And Charles Oliveira's name was even thrown out there by Dana White. So Dan Hooker, obviously a great fighter, a top, 6'7" lightweight, whatever he's ranked right now in the UFC's rankings. Yeah. But if you look at him compared to those other like marquee names at lightweight, he's just a slight rung above that. And I think a lot of people were expecting Michael Chandler to come in and fight one of those guys right off the bat. So in that sense, maybe not the fight we were expecting, but still a sensational fight. I think it's going to be interesting to see how it unfolds. I'm curious to see what Michael Chandler's strategy is going to be here, because Dan Hooker is a guy who can finish a damn fight, man. Like, he is one of the most
Yeah.
devastating finishers in this lightweight division. And I think Michael Chandler's got to be very, very careful in these first 2 rounds. I'm curious to see if he goes to a wrestling and grappling heavy strategy in this fight, just to maybe take away some of the finish threat of Dan Hooker early on. And if he can, it might not be super entertaining, but if he can grind out like a round or 2 using his wrestling and clinch work, and then maybe Dan Hooker gives us a late push or something like that, and it ends up being like a 29-28 Michael Chandler, I think that's possibly a really realistic way this fight unfolds. But it's a good introductory to Michael Chandler. If he goes in there and wipes the floor with Dan Hooker, I think it's going to put him in a real good position to maybe get a title fight or fight one of those 1, 2, 3 ranked guys. For Dan Hooker, I mean, I think he needs to win here as well if he wants to prove that he's like a title ready guy, because he obviously had that loss to Poirier where he started really strong. It seemed like that was going to be his moment, and then he allowed Poirier to flip the script on him and just take over the fight and obviously get the win there. So yeah, if Dan Hooker, I think, wants to be in a title fight, be a champion, this one is a must.
Yeah, very interesting matchup. I think Dan Hooker is a great fighter, and I feel like he can put up a fight. It's gonna be very interesting how Chandler handles that, and to see if it really becomes a grapple war in that matchup. I think Michael Chandler should get this win. Obviously, no disrespect to Dan Hooker, phenomenal fighter. Very exciting to watch this one. Is there another fight you're looking forward to during your Fight Island time?
Amanda Ribas, for sure, against Marina Rodriguez. I think Amanda Ribas has star potential, obviously
Yeah.
unlimited charisma. She might be the happiest person I've ever met in my entire life. But yeah, I think she's someone the UFC is grooming to be a big star for them. She is massive for the strawweight division, very well-rounded. Marina Rodriguez, and a fellow Brazilian to her, is a really tough test in this fight. And if Amanda can look as impressive in this one as she has her previous UFC fights, obviously coming off a win over Paige Van Zandt at the last Fight Island, the sky's the limit for her. I do think she's a future champion. I think she would be a tough matchup for any of the people in that top 4, Zhang Weili, Carla Esparza, Rose Namajunas, etc. I think, Amanda Ribas is a one to watch, and she's even said it herself. Her goal is to steal the star and the spotlight off a Conor McGregor fight card. And if you are trying to position someone to blow up, the UFC did a great job booking her on a Conor McGregor undercard, because a lot of people who probably don't know who she is quite yet will be watching this event. And if she can give a really strong effort, I think her momentum is just gonna skyrocket.
Awesome. Real quick, I know we got to wrap it up. Mike, is there another fight that's not in this Fight Island edition that you're looking forward to in 2021?
Ooh, like something that's booked already, or just something I kind of
Yes,
hope to happen?
something that's booked, something you're hoping, something that you want to see, that you're just excited, absolutely excited to watch.
Yeah, I mean, I think John Jones making his heavyweight debut is going to be one of the big storylines of 2021. I don't know who it's going to be against, whether it'll be Stipe or Francis
Francis.
Ngannou. That's a great rematch that's going to happen in itself. But yeah, I think I've been waiting to see John Jones at heavyweight for a very, very, very long time. And it seems like he's doing all the right things to make it happen. Like, there's all this talk of, is he going to go back down and fight Izzy if Izzy beats Jan Blachowicz in March?
Yeah.
But from all I've seen from John Jones, his interviews, his training, all that stuff, he is committed to the heavyweight move. He's taking all the time he needs to put on the weight properly, to bulk up, maintain his cardio, give his strength and everything that's appropriate for heavyweight. And that's not something he can just snap his fingers and take away and go back down to 205. He's indicated himself he's never going to fight at 205 again. So whenever John Jones makes his heavyweight debut, really looking forward to that. And then just a couple others, obviously, if they can get Jorge Masvidal and Colby Covington in there, I think that's a
That'd
really,
be
really
sick.
fascinating fight. Yeah.
Yeah, that'd be very, very sick. Awesome, Mike. Well, thank you for your time. I definitely appreciate it. I know you're very busy out there, so thanks for coming on. Is there anything you want to let the audience know before we sign off?
No, man, just obviously we're over here. We're going to have coverage on MMAJunkie.com for the coming 2 weeks. John Morgan is here with me as well. So there's going to be media days, weigh-ins, a press conference for Conor and Dustin. I don't know exactly what day that's going to be. I think the Wednesday or Thursday of fight week. So yeah, lots of good stuff coming. Obviously, frequent MMAJunkie.com. You can follow me on Twitter and Instagram, Mike Bohn MMA, first and last name MMA. And yeah, man, I appreciate you having me on. This is a great chat.
Thank you for your time. I'm gonna actually have the link to all those accounts, link in the description below this video. Thanks once again, Mike. Appreciate the time, and to all the audience, I appreciate your time. I'll catch you later, guys. Goodbye.